Before he was a Super Bowl champion, Rocky Bleier was just a young man with a dream to play professional football. In 1968, that dream was interrupted right as he got drafted, not by injury, but by war. For most fans, Rocky Bleier's name is remembered as one of the greatest comeback stories in sports history, if remembered at all. But what often gets lost is the story of who he was and what he carried long before the celebration. Bleier grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin, and is the oldest of 4 children. His parents owned a bar called Bleier's Bar, which Rocky lived above and occasionally worked at. Rocky was a 3-time All-State selection at running back and won All-Conference at linebacker and defensive back. He was also a team captain in football, basketball, and track. After high school, he went on to play college football at Notre Dame. After winning the national championship his junior year and becoming a captain his senior year at Notre Dame, Rocky was drafted into the NFL by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 16th round, 417th overall. That same year, a couple of months later, he was also drafted into the United States Army. One draft promised opportunity, the other didn't promise anything. Before his professional career could truly begin, Bleier was sent halfway around the world with a grenade launcher in his hands. While serving in Vietnam, Rocky Bleier was injured twice in combat. First by a bullet to his foot, then by a grenade explosion that severely damaged his leg with shrapnel. Doctors told him he might never walk normally again. Football, they said, was no longer possible. He was awarded the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart for his sacrifice, but Rocky was devastated, wanting to continue to play football. What could be seen were the physical injuries. What went largely unspoken were the emotional and psychological effects of war, effects few people discussed at the time. Years later, Bleier reflected on how quickly his life changed.
You say you're going to have a normal life. I mean, do things that normal people do. Just don't expect to get back on the gridiron. He said you just won't have the strength or the flexibility to do the things that are necessary to be a running back in the NFL. And so that was his, and he kind of like just sucked that hope, right out, at that moment in time. And then shortly thereafter, and so this part of the story is I got a postcard in the mail, and the postcard had 2 lines on it. It said, "Rock, team's not doing well, we need you. Art Rooney, owner of the team." And so all of a sudden it was like, ooh, somebody needs me. Not that he needed me, but that was, there was a boost of confidence or a boost of, hope that, that somebody cares, at that time.
When Rocky returned home, recovery was painful and uncertain, but getting back to playing football became more than just going back to a hobby. It became a purpose, something that Rocky needed for himself, a way to rebuild his identity after the trauma he experienced in the war. For Bleier, returning to football wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about reclaiming something that war had taken away. In just a few seasons of injured reserve, Rocky gained roughly 32 pounds of weight and earned a spot in the Steelers' starting lineup after the summer of 1974. Against all the odds, Rocky Bleier returned to the NFL. He became a key part of the Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty, winning an absurd 4 Super Bowls. In 1976, he rushed for over 1,000 yards alongside Franco Harris, who did the same. They were the second running back duo ever in the NFL to both have over 1,000 yards in the same season. Rocky retired with 3,865 rushing yards, 136 receptions for 1,294 yards, and 25 touchdowns. He was the Steelers' 4th all-time leading rusher when he retired. Rocky's story became legendary, a symbol of toughness and a triumph over adversity. It's the version of the story most people know, the one that Rocky is the most valued for. What isn't complimented enough is his mental ability to stay strong throughout all this. Today, sports conversations include mental health and conditions like CTE, reminders that trauma isn't always visible. Rocky Bleier does not represent those diagnoses from the game directly, but his story reflects a different era, one where athletes and veterans were expected to endure pain quietly and move forward without reflection. Strength was defined by his visible strength, and vulnerability was rarely acknowledged. Men like Rocky were made out to be heroes of stories they didn't necessarily agree with. Rocky Bleier's story matters not just because he came back to football, but because it forces us to think about how we define strength. His legacy reminds us that resilience often comes with unseen costs, and that the most powerful stories in sports aren't just about the victories, they're about one's ability to get to that point. Rocky Bleier will always be remembered for one of the greatest comebacks in sports history, but his story deserves more than applause. It deserves understanding.